Hello and welcome to the Art of Aging Well. Today we will continue with our series on metabolic dysfunction and insulin resistance, which is, by the way, are the same. So, to avoid confusion, I might use these terms interchangeably. Now, last time we talked about how serious and how widespread this problem really is. Today, I will discuss how do you know if you have insulin resistance. Now, let me describe a couple of situations you might recognize. First, crashes, not car crashes. I'm talking about different crashes. You eat a meal, and instead of feeling energized, you feel sleepy. Your brain gets foggy. You lose focus. You feel like you could nap at your desk. More than likely, this is from insulin resistance. And this is what happens at the cellular level. After you eat, your blood sugar rises higher than it should, especially after carbohydrates. Carbohydrates raise blood sugar and insulin the most. Protein raises them a little bit less, and fat raises them the least. That high blood sugar forces your pancreas to release a large surge of insulin to control the sugar by pushing sugar into your cells. But your mitochondria, the energy factories inside your cells, are not working properly. And it could be due to various causes, which we will discuss in future videos. So instead of burning sugar for energy, it is stored as a fat in fat cells. So your blood sugar begins to fall, but your brain depends on sugar. So it signals the liver to release more sugar into the bloodstream. So the insulin rises again to push that sugar back into the storage. At the same time, insulin shuts off fat burning. So your body cannot use fat for energy either. So your cells are literally starved in spite of being surrounded by fuel. So they send distress signal to the brain. And your brain responds by slowing you down. So you feel tired, you feel foggy, you feel heavy, and you feel hungry. So this is the early crash. Usually happens 30 to 90 minutes after eating. A few hours later, something else happens. You are hungry again. Not normal hungry. Ravenously hungry. Hangry means angry, shaky, nervous. And that's because the insulin surge has overshot and your blood sugar has dropped too low. So your brain panics and releases the stress hormones, flight and fight response, adrenaline and cortisol. So that's why you feel shaky, sweaty, even nauseous, anxious, angry, and could even have palpitation. So these are all symptoms of stress hormone being released in response to low blood sugar. So you are desperate to eat right and then, and until you eat, you feel miserable. Same situation occurs at 2 or 3 in the morning, sweating, heart racing. Again, it is due to low blood sugar and the release of cortisol, and adrenaline. And this is the late crash, which we call reactive hypoglycemia, usually 3 to 4 hours after a meal. Second scenario, belly fat, the most dangerous kind. It's not unusual to see that people, and you might have noticed your waistline keeps creeping up and you are putting on few pounds year after year despite doing everything right. Egg white omelets, whole grains, fruits, vegetables, no saturated fat, low fat diet, low fat everything, and miles on your treadmill. But still you keep gaining weight. So you ask your doctor, Doc, what's happening? I'm really not eating much and eating very healthy and exercising regularly, and still I keep gaining weight. More than likely, the doctor is going through the same thing and quietly wondering why. Or if he or she happens to be lean, they look at you and conclude you are probably not telling the full story. There, you must be gobbling unhealthy food like it's going out of style while sitting on the couch watching TV all day. And the prescription is always the same: cut calories and exercise more. But here is the truth: you didn't get heavier because you lacked discipline or willpower. You got heavier because of high insulin and insulin resistance. So, what happens when insulin is high? Losing weight becomes nearly impossible because insulin diverts all your calories or most of your calories into storage. And it doesn't just store it, it locks it and throws away the key. It's like a miser who won't let you spend your money and instead keeps stuffing it into a safe deposit box at the bank and then loses the key. So your brain is starving despite abundant energy stored away. So it keeps telling you to eat. And if you don't, you feel miserable, you feel tired, you feel foggy, you feel hungry, you feel angry. So you eat. And those calories get locked away again, quietly accumulating and driving slow, relentless, impossible to fight weight gain. So remember, you don't get fat because you eat more, you eat more because you are getting fat. So the next time you see someone struggling with weight, do not blame the person. Blame insulin and insulin resistance. The third warning sign is high blood pressure. When your blood pressure slowly starts creeping up, the first thing most people and the doctors blame is salt. But that belief is often misguided. It's not salt, it's sugar. And it's not cholesterol hardening your arteries, it's insulin and insulin resistance. So, this is what happens. When insulin stays high, your kidneys are told to hold on to sodium and water. So, the blood volume expands and your blood pressure goes up, even if you don't eat much salt. At the same time, high insulin quietly damages your blood vessels, which become stiff and inflamed. And that stiffness, what we call atherosclerosis, itself pushes blood pressure higher. So the slow rise in blood pressure is often the first visible sign of insulin resistance. So if someone in their 30s and start having blood pressure creeping up, usually it's It's an insulin problem. Other tests important early warning urine for protein and microalbumin. So the kidneys are the first organs to feel metabolic stress. High insulin and insulin resistant injure the kidney's delicate filtration system, causing small amount of protein leak into the urine, which we call microalbumin and a protein. And that is the earliest signal of kidney damage. And often it will be blamed on blood pressure, but it's an insulin problem. So these are the signs. What are the lab tests for insulin resistance? And number one is a fasting insulin, the most important early detector nobody orders. I bet your physician may not have ordered that test. Fasting insulin should be low. Ideally, should be under 10 and better under 5. If it's creeping upward, your metabolism is already struggling. Fasting glucose, that is only half the story. Fasting glucose should be under 90. But unless it's under 100, unless it's above 100, your doctor may not even tell you anything is wrong. Ideally, it should be under 80. But glucose alone can fool you. You can have normal fasting sugar, but if insulin is high, there is still insulin resistance. So we have a test called HOMA-IR, HOMA-IR, which is calculation. It's putting insulin and sugar together in context. And it's calculated by fasting insulin multiplied by fasting sugar, glucose, divided by 405, 405. And it should be under 2, ideally under 1. So looking at insulin or glucose alone, remember, gives you half the story. HOMA-IR gives you the whole picture. And that is, I believe, is one of the most crucial and important tests for early tests for insulin resistance. Hemoglobin A1C, everybody knows about, it's a latecomer. It should be under 6, ideally should be under 5.5. A1C usually rises about 10 to 12 years after insulin starts rising. So when A1C drifts upward above 6, insulin resistance has been present for years already. There are other lipid abnormalities typical for insulin resistant patients, which is triglyceride rising and HDL falling. So triglyceride to HDL ratio should be 2 or less, ideally 1 or less. And this pattern of high triglyceride, low HDL is called insulin resistant dyslipidemia. One other test is HSCRP, high sensitivity CRP, which is inflammation signal. Should be under 2, ideally under 1. So the insulin resistant causes inflammation, and HSCRP measures their damage. When insulin stays high, fat tissue and blood vessels become inflamed and stress. That injury triggers the liver to release CRP into the blood. So when CRP starts rising, it means insulin resistance is already injuring your body. Advanced testing you don't need, but only in special situation you can do lipid particle, and it's called LPIR, lipoprotein insulin resistance, which is only useful when your glucose is normal, A1C is normal, HOMA-IR is normal, insulin is normal, and still you have the symptoms of insulin resistance. In only that narrow window, this test is useful. But most of the test I mentioned is very basic, simple. You probably get it done regularly, except insulin. So these are the signs and symptoms. We will continue this series. The next video, we will talk about how this, I will explain the detail how this insulin resistant causes all these diseases we mentioned briefly. And then we'll talk about what are the real world causes of insulin resistance. Until then, take care and stay healthy.